But what I'm going to talk a little bit about now is this selling out, and especially this precise statement saying, is it possible to sell out in 2 minutes? And I'll try to explain why that is not possible. Because you have probably, a lot of you, seen all these press clipping where a super hot show sort of have been announced or presented has been sold out in a very few number of seconds or minutes. And there is still a lot of these popping up each time one of the global artists is up for sale. But first of all, with a little bit of a definition here. So what does sold out or selling out actually mean? And that is probably some part of the explanation. But first of all, it is about selling all the announced tickets. So if you're claiming that you have an on sale starting at 10 o'clock and you're selling 20,000 tickets, then it means all 20,000 tickets, not half of them or a third or whatever other number. So it's the announced amount. And the next thing is that it needs to be sold to individual internet users, or at least something that looks like internet users. So we're not talking about like bots and other part of what can probably screw the data a little bit. And it is sold in a way where the transaction cannot be or is not on the way to be reverted. Credit card payment has been verified and the end user have received a confirmation. So that definition is of course relatively clear, and nobody would sort of start discussing whether this is the right definition or not, and especially not the way a fan or a patron or an end user on the internet would understand it. So here we have a flow diagram. It's actually from the Royal Danish Theatre using tessitura here in Copenhagen, and you probably all know the select, like the show, find some seats, put them in the basket, and then eventually check them out. And what you can see here is that from step 3 and going forward, there is actually a timer presented on the screen. And what that timer does, apart from counting down, is eventually, if the transaction is not finalized within the set amount of time, then the actual session is cancelled. And if it was tickets that were actually reserved, those tickets would be put back into the system where other people can go and buy the exact number of seats or the seats that are released. That timer is typically somewhere in between 7 and 30 minutes, a little bit depending on the ticketing platform and how the sale is organized. But this here is actually one of the core elements in the graph that I'm going to present here now, because, but this here means that we have that timer, and that timer will eventually time out. And it will time out in places where the baskets and carts are left without a checkout. And there is a tons of reason why it actually is so that they're not checked out. It can be that a user is using multiple browsers. They will normally only go into the browsers that allows them to get the right tickets first and do the purchase there. It can be that users are using multiple devices like the desktop, tablet, mobile, and so forth, or even purchasing in groups, so like friends, family are sitting with each their computer or setup, and they are then corresponding over the phone. And once they have the tickets in hand and actually purchase them, they will then leave whatever other browsers were used in the actual flow. It can also like be other things, like you're coming into the point where you reserve some tickets, but you're not so super happy about the seating. It can be that the price is incorrect, meaning you're getting a little bit of surprise when you're seeing like some of the service fees or other stuff that can be put on top of what you actually thought was the core price of the tickets. So the consequence of this here is depicted in the graph. We have two lines. There is a red line and a green line. The green line represent the tickets that are not sold at a given time, whereas the red one depict the tickets that are not reserved. Both of them will obviously at the full hour, for example 10 a.m., start at 100%. So 100% not reserved tickets, 100% not sold tickets. Then the red curve will move relatively fast towards 0%, meaning that people are, end users are going in and do reservations on the tickets. The actual sold tickets are coming, first of all, a little bit later, meaning we need to do the reservation first, and then there is some process step before the tickets are actually checked out. But the interesting thing is, of course, that there is a difference between the number of tickets that are reserved and those tickets that are sold for the reasons I have already explained. Meaning they are sitting in baskets and in reservations, and are coming to a point where they are not checked out. And that basically means that 10 minutes into the sale, or whatever the timer of the session timeout is, some of the tickets that have not been purchased, they were reserved but not purchased, then they are then put back into the pool where other users can go and select them, go and check them out. And you will, in most on-sales, see the same function or feature like 20 minutes into the sale. That leaves a couple of very interesting findings here. So first of all, many platforms will give the end users a perception that all tickets were sold out when you're coming 3 to 5 minutes into the actual on-sale timeline. That does not mean that they are sold in the way we have defined it. That means that they are maybe impossible to find tickets that you can go and buy. And that will actually happen one more time, probably in the range of 15 to 20 minutes later. But what we are sort of able to conclude out of these two graphs here is that it is impossible when you have a difference between the non-sold and the non-reserved tickets, that you can actually sell everything in a few minutes. And the difference between the reserved tickets and the not sold tickets when we're coming the first session time out into the on-sale is typically somewhere between 20 to 40%. And when you're coming a little bit later into the timeline, 20 minutes in, it's probably closer to somewhere between 10 and 20%. So what we also can conclude out of this here is that the timeline or the actual time it takes to sell out is not a function of your hardware or your capacity or the number of tickets or anything. It's simply just a function of the how long that cart timeout is set up in your system. And as most systems you will see on the internet have a session timer on the other side of 10 minutes, and that is typically to give the end user a good experience, then there is no way that you would be able to sell out in a few minutes. And again, this has nothing to do with the capacity or the way it's done or whatever. It's solely a function of the timeout that the given system has. So the claim is that it's impossible to sell out in less than 2 times that basket cart timeout time. And that is something that we have been claiming for at least 4 years now. And as we are currently helping with up to close to 400 on-sales on a busy day, we can also say that we have not in those past 10 years seen anything that are contradicting the claim. And that is, of course, pretty interesting because you still, even from some of the biggest promoter and so forth, are able to see that we sold out immediately. And it is, as you probably could conclude with me, impossible to do so. Then we have a couple of other interesting things, and the first one is something that has to do with the holes in pre-sale. But to give a little bit of background of the oldest trick in ticketing, I'll try to explain it here. And it is, of course, something we have sort of learned and figured out along the way. So you are the box office manager. And what you do is that you tear the entire set of tickets from the first row off, put the exact amount in the cashier, and then everything seen from the financial perspective is, of course, all clear. The money is in the cashier, and the tickets are gone. So when the guy here, first in the row or in the queue, comes up and asks about whether he can get some tickets on first row, they will obviously be sold out. And then he will look at the box office manager and say, hey, notch, notch. Say, okay, let's go to the back door, and at the back door, those tickets are, of course, coming up of and out of the pocket and are sold to a inflated price. And still, everything is sort of still matching from any financial perspective. And the only thing is that someone have actually paid a overprice for some tickets. But sort of the industry's way of talking about this here. So bots are buying these tickets here and are reselling them on StubHub and via GoGo. The truth is, of course, that the bots and the way it's actually depicted here is not the real and the true image, because it is, of course, a lot of a huge issue with all the scalping and touting going on. But it is very important to remember that it's actually humans who are taking the tickets away during the on sale, and it is humans who are selling them again on the secondary market. And to give you a little bit of a background on a real story where the entire industry actually got some insights into what was going on, a company called Wise Guys were actually operating a big scalping operation, but they were arrested. The CEO and a couple of other guys were actually arrested by FBI and put into jail for a period. And during that entire trial, they actually reveal a lot of the mechanics on how they managed to run that specific business. So first of all, as you can see on the slides here, it is a combination of humans and scripts. Cube farm, large boiler room operation, where they were sometimes sitting as many as 100 people in a room buying tickets, for example, out of Ticketmaster. And in some cases, they were able to get like 95% of all the tickets that were available for a given on sale. They earned a lot of money. Took some time to actually get them indicted, but it was sort of the end of that story. So what they did was to have some extremely precise login that were way faster than what a human can do. They were fooling all the captures with a large database of at least 30,000 different solutions that they actually managed to build on the way. And they were able to secure the best seats and again selling them at a steep markup. So the learning on all this here is again that okay, there is bots, and you are thinking about these mechanical creators here on the internet, but it is actually humans sitting behind and do that operation. There is tons of commercial products out there. You can get bots where you can buy tickets out of Ticketmaster. The new generation is tools that are more sort of for the larger boiler room operations. And one of the infamous one is called Insomnic browser. And that specific one is simply a tool that on a single computer can emulate a tons of different users coming from a set of VPN proxy IP addresses, and it can do more or less everything that make it look like a normal user coming from a clean computer. And the worst thing about it is that 2-3 years ago, it was actually possible to, by looking at the IP addresses, to figure out whether it was a data center or some other kind of IP address. But it is currently possible to get what is called residential IP addresses, meaning IP addresses of real people, real households. And this is, for example, all your Internet of Things devices you have in your house, your camera, your television, and so forth, that are infected and are used as a proxy, thereby hiding the actual IP address of the guy sitting behind or in the boiler rooms. Tickets for generals on sales is also a little bit of a blurred thing here, and this analytics shows you why. So you can see that you have holes for insiders. There is typically some pre-sale events where another set of tickets are gone, and then you're coming to the general public. And in many cases, we are coming so that more than half of the tickets for a popular show is actually gone into other places before you're coming to the actual general on sale. And then all this messaging about sold out, and especially because it's not really the case, is actually backfiring on the industry right now. And one of the first very interesting thing here, and that we have also learned on the way, is that you do not need to own a ticket before you can sell it on StubHub or via GoGo. So you can actually sell it as an option. So sometimes you see that tickets go on sale for like a Hamilton and whatever on one of these secondary platforms on a time where we know for sure by looking at the graphs and statistics in Qt that it is impossible for those tickets to actually have been sold at that time. But that's the way these platform operates. You can just say that you have some tickets, and this is of course used by the scalpers that sold out combined with what they're able to do to actually make the platform look like stuff are sold out by doing reservations, doing logging of a large part of the inventory with CubeFarm, boiler room bots, and so forth. And when normal people are then coming in a couple of minutes into the on sale, and with that sold out sort of myth in their head, they would actually believe that stuff is sold out, even if it's not even close to being sold out, and then dump directly into StubHub and buy the same or the tickets they want to have at a very increased price. So recommendations, and that is really not that complex. It is to be transparent, and that transparency is of course something where you need to be transparent and honest about what is going on. And a couple of things sort of going on before the on sale is to be very, very, very careful about the wording for memberships. Do not put a promise up when you're selling the memberships that if you buy the memberships, you can actually get a Hamilton ticket at the pre-sale or membership sale. So if you have any doubt that you have too many members for the interest coming up here, then be very precise on the wording. Be also very informative about the inventory you have for a given on sale. So if you're selling 20,000 tickets for 2 months or whatever, then tell everybody that this is what is going on. But also inform about the process and any kind of constraints that might be in the process. And that can, for example, be you need to be here before 10 o'clock. You can only buy with the American Express card, or you need to have the ticket sold sent to a physical address, or whatever the given constraint is. Just be very clear that this is something that will decrease the amount of complaints, but also the anxiety and uncertainty on the entire process. We have this concept of pre-queuing in Qt, having a long pre-queue, meaning that the user comes into this wait page with a countdown on, do it in a good period before the actual sale. If it's something where you're going to sell like 60,000 tickets, then 60 minutes is maybe the right part here. And then the next recommendation here is make sure that you're only taking the users out of the queue who realistically can come to the end of their journey. Again, selling 100 tickets and you have 20,000 in queue, then only take like 100 or 200 out of the queue. Leave the others there. Don't try to push it and go faster than is actually needed. So what you want, what you don't want to have is that you're coming in these two situations where it actually looked like you have those two sold out, and they will be coming if you're taking users faster in than you can actually sell the tickets, because people will then come out of the queue and see something where it might be that it's not sold out, but they will see they will not be able to find any tickets they can buy, and then they will believe it's sold out. And it will also be so if two people are sitting next to each other and one sees sold out and the other do not see sold out, there can be a lot of discussion about that and even going into the social media. So basically what you want to do is to try to run the red and the green line in parallel, so that you are basically selling at a constant speed. And that speed is something where you know it's going to take at least 2 times the time out of the sessions. So never try to do anything faster than those 20 minutes if you have a larger on sale and talking about like on the other side of 1,000 tickets.